Okay, hi folks. Looks like we have everyone hopping in here. Welcome to the Zoho Thought Leadership Series. I am very excited to have with me today a couple of panelists, Peter Fuller and Matt Galegli. Sorry, Matt, if I mispronounced your last name there. We are going to be diving into, I think, a very interesting topic. It's certainly a very important area of concentration for us here at Catalyst, and that is building authentic relationships with our clients to get repeat work. So with that being said, this is a continuation of our series. We've gone over onboarding and expectation management with clients, defined scopes of work and project management. We then segued into frequent communication and how that makes for successful client relationships, budgets and contracts, and obviously today we are diving into fostering those relationships to get ongoing work. So we have a couple of partners here that have done a fantastic job of building client relationships. I think you have all had the chance to connect with Peter Fuller at Canva Dynamics / the Workflow Academy. He's helped a lot of us with new development placements and contributing to ongoing education. And Matt has been a pillar in the Zoho ecosystem, really handling everything from small to larger enterprise accounts. So we're going to very much appreciate his insight into building teams and catering to both small and large clients. So welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me.
Listen, when the Zoho John Mark signal goes up into the sky, I just descend and come to save the city.
Well, Peter, you have that glow that you always bring to the webinars, so appreciate your input here. Great. So to dive into today's agenda, we're going to be really touching on a few different topics. The first is creating the right team. Now, we all know how difficult it can be to recruit, train, and keep the right talent. So we'll be discussing a little bit about our strategies to do so. We will then touch on weekly client check-ins, building rapport with clients, creating brand loyalty, and then soliciting referrals. So without further ado, let's dive into the real purpose here, which is trying to build a customer experience that leaves the customer thinking that they have to share that experience with others. That's, I think, at the forefront of everything that we do, is trying to deliver the utmost value to our clients so that they feel like they've got a real win in doing business with us. And that really starts with building the right team. Now, we've experimented over the years in recruiting folks from really all over the place, from very experienced devs from the big corporate world to newly grads to folks out of the Workflow Academy. And you know, we've got a lot of varying results. And something that I've found to be really beneficial is the sourcing our team from different backgrounds. I think that one of the areas that we really excel in is building a diverse team from various walks of life, different corporate backgrounds or industry backgrounds, and bringing in that real world experience to the team has been a tremendous benefit to us as an organization in terms of the knowledge that we bring to clients. And when it comes to recruiting, some of the best sources for talent have been out of university programs, particularly Masters in Information Systems coursework. Typically, those folks have a background in development and are now learning the business side of things. On the flip side, we've had equal success in hiring folks with a business background and teaching more technical work. Now, what it really comes down to is figuring out how you're going to structure your teams and what kind of talent you need where. So I'd like to maybe open this up to Peter and Matt. where have you guys gone to seek talent for your teams, and what do you look for when you are hiring for a Zoho consultant position?
Take it, Matt. I want to hear
Sure. Yeah, no. Well, yeah, so, shameless plug, I'll do it for Peter. We've had a couple of great placements out of the Workflow Academy. So that, is certainly a nice head start to be at least familiar with the Zoho ecosystem and Deluge coding and that sort of thing. So that's been, a successful channel. That said, John Mark, I think, similar to what you mentioned, we've had good success with some younger, folks coming straight out of college, right? And they have not necessarily heard of Zoho before, but and this was kind of a leap I took, and it worked out great, a couple times so far. Is bringing somebody in that has no exposure to Deluge, but they know JavaScript or PHP or something similar, and they pick it right up. Right. And I'm not a trained developer. I've picked up Deluge over a lot of years and know it really well at this point. So I wasn't sure if that was a realistic thing or not, but so far it seems to be. We have not hired any really senior developers thus far in our company. So I can't speak to that, but someday we'll get to that. But ultimately, I think, our biggest overarching thing is we can teach you a lot, and really it comes down to attitude over aptitude. If you get the right attitude and you want to learn, then we're willing to spend the time to teach you. But if you don't, obviously that's not going to go well. So that's kind of our hiring motto, if you will.
I think well said. And Peter, I know that you've really worked with folks from a variety of backgrounds, but I think that a willingness to learn is really probably paramount when looking for folks.
Yeah, I'm super interested feedback both from you two and from anyone in chat. So for anyone that doesn't know, I'll continue the shameless plug. We have an apprenticeship program. It started, Matt and John Mark have hired kind of our beta group of students. It's now really starting. We have a Zoho career education track, 200 to 250 hours, a month and a half to 2 months of full-time training for apprentices that are sourced through the Department of Labor. And we get some really just freaking smart people. I mean, I have one guy that's a 3D, he's a 3D animator for 20 years. And he's like, I just got sick of living in LA and having to bounce from contract to contract, and I'd like something more stable. I have really smart English grads who, like me, get a humanities degree and realize I am useless to society, that want some like hard skills, right? So that's what we do. We train them up a month and a half, 2 months. And actually we've restructured it, Matt and John Mark, to now you interview and you make job offers first, and then the training happens. So it's like a match from the beginning. And in order to do that, we've had to find a much bigger talent pool of smart people, which we have. The Department of Labor has piles and piles of smart people. So anyways, here's the question. Sorry, shameless plug. I've doubled down almost exclusively on this concept of you take raw talent, you take like eager young space cadets, like I was once a few years ago, right? And you show them, hey, to be real, Zoho and Deluge aren't that complicated. You don't necessarily need to have years and years of experience. So that's kind of where I'm doubling down. There's two shortcomings there. Number one, and the one that we all experience, is that you have just a huge bottleneck of like adults in the room who can talk with CEOs and come up with a CEO with like a plan for how a system can help them revolutionize their business. I can't put my English grad on that call, right? Yet. I mean, CJ on your team, John Mark, can do that now, and he was a realtor. So it's like they can get to that point, but it takes time. The other big problem is they don't necessarily bring like a ton of experience to where like they still just need their hand held a lot of the time, right? And so that's where I'm really interested. I don't know very many partners that bring on senior talent. Most people I talk to start low. I'm interested. Have you guys been in chat? Like, how has that gone for you? Have you done it? Have you not done it? Why?
No, I think that there's really a three-pronged approach. I think that for one, you have to recruit the right talent. There's a huge component in there, and that is culture fit. You're having the right folks who gel well with the team, that are eager to learn. I think that it's difficult to say if one particular channel of recruiting is better than another, or young talent or senior talent is best, because they're going to be bringing different assets to the table. And I think that first and foremost, having a willingness to learn and contribute and build with the team is really important. So that's kind of a foundational piece where, agnostic of their hard skill set or even some of their soft skill sets, it's a willingness to learn and contribute, because the Zoho ecosystem is evolving quickly. You're never going to stop learning. You have to kind of embrace change and be willing to roll with the punches a little bit. The next thing is that you really need to make sure that as business owners and as companies, we are setting new recruits up for success. And that means investing the requisite amount of training. And it doesn't happen overnight. And there's the technical training, and then there's the process training, and creating the right environments and work culture that incentivizes folks to stay long term, because as you get folks familiar with the process and the technical skill sets, that's when it starts to really build and gel. And Peter, to your question earlier about how do you structure things so that you can get some of that senior talent and someone in front of a CEO where they can have those higher level conversations, that does take time. And the way that we've structured things in our organization now is we're fortunate to have reached a scale that we essentially have different degrees of specialty. So we have a cloud solution architect who does the initial project planning and consulting, if you will, of being able to converse with the C-suite, understand the business need, and also understand what's technically available in the Zoho ecosystem, and really have more business process discussions and high-level technology discussions. The solution architects really lead a lot of those efforts, but they are paired with a Zoho consultant. This is someone who has a far more technical background, and this master in MIS program, or someone that's come from a dev-heavy background that's transferred over to the business side, is that perfect, I think, combination of a hard skill set and soft skills when it comes to business process. So we pair a cloud solution architect with the consultant in developing that project plan and solution. The full tech spec that's developed by the cloud solution architect then gets handed over to the consultant to really quarterback, but then they backed up by a full stack developer on our team. And this is where you get that continuum from a more business process focused consultant up front through to a project manager who can really speak very well to the technical side, but also understands and has been a part of the business process discussions. And then they can shift a lot of the very dev heavy work to a full stack developer, where they can then be very efficient at executing pure code. And I think that having that kind of team behind a project really results in a very efficient and well put together plan. And depending on where you're recruiting for, I think that's going to kind of dictate what that training and onboarding looks like.
Correct. And we've set our stuff up pretty much the same. I promise I didn't try to copy you, but you set the standard. So then, question then. Have you ever, I actually know is CJ one of your cloud solution architects?
Yes.
So CJ started as a Zoho consultant though.
He did, yeah. So we've certainly evolved our programs and the expertise that we staff on a particular project. And in the early days, we were doing smaller projects. These were, $5,000-$10,000 implementations, and it was very superficial in terms of the deep dives into business process that we were doing. And we had the benefit of really kind of cutting our teeth into some of these smaller projects, developing the right frameworks, best practices. And now, I mean, especially since we've absorbed the Cloudbaker team, we have thousands of projects of experience. And I think we now have as a team more than 75,000 hours in Zoho consulting under our belts. So we have this tremendous depth in terms of industry expertise and what's worked well and what hasn't. And we're using that to shape some of these best practice implementations for different industry verticals. And that's now allowing someone who perhaps has less business experience to rely on the framework of, well, this is a case study that we can follow, or do you know what, maybe we should go and take a look at that implementation, see lessons learned, and apply that to this new project plan that we're doing. So I think that's something that I would certainly encourage all partners to do, is to create these feedback loops, and we'll touch on that a little bit when we get into this ongoing client work, because you want to understand what's worked well and what hasn't, so that you can then feed that back to your project plan or architecture team, so that you can create these frameworks. And that allows you to bring more technical talent to the business process side, or even someone who has a lot of business depth but less technical knowledge, they can then understand how technology can play into that.
I like that. So you're answering my question by basically saying, you home grow some of your technical architects, because all of us, I think, agree, at least for me, the number one bottleneck, bar none, from the beginning of the entire business has been the cloud solution architect, aka the person that does my job, that makes it so that I don't have to do my job, so that I can go sip Mai Tais on a beach, or whatever the Mormon equivalent of sipping Mai Tais on a beach is. So yeah, that you home grow them. But then I also appreciate and identify with that example, or that idea of, the more you codify your knowledge and best practices, the less that people need to be able to do the less trained someone has to be. You've built the scaffolding around them that a less qualified person can start filling that role earlier.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that creating that framework and those structures really are the foundation for any strong team. Yeah. And with the right team, you can deliver the right quality service, and that then results in this repeat work. At least that's what we are finding through our business, is that in order to scale, you have to have that. It's a different game when you have less than 5 people. We're now close to 30 people, and we have to structure things in teams, and we have to have some frameworks and that scaffolding, so to speak.
Yes, I like that.
Matt, I'm curious to hear your take on how you have structured your organization as it relates to building the right teams that then give you the foundation to support your clients well.
Sure. Yeah. No, it's good to hear your structure, and like Peter, we're essentially the same at smaller scale currently, but we're working on the growth trajectory is looking pretty good in the next couple of years. So essentially, I mean, exactly like Peter said too, I'm the cloud solutions architect right now, and in the process of bringing in project managers, and eventually I'd like to replace myself, but have pretty similar layers there, right? That you referred to. One question I do have as I think about that: do you typically pair? Are your teams pretty well set, or do they get mixed and matched by projects? Like, would you have a different project manager work with a different set of developers, or are they kind of in insulated pods, if you will?
That's a great question, and that's something that we still are working on. We're going to try and keep them in pods because there's much easier capacity planning, but it's inevitable that we're going to need to mix and match resources to staff the project with the requisite expertise. So we have some guidelines that certain solution architects will work with their consultant who's supported by their dev, but and we'll try to keep that as consistent as possible. At scale, that's going to become increasingly important because you can't have multiple teams doing multiple system go lives in the same week. And that's something that we realized this summer with the acquisition of the Cloudbaker team, is that all of a sudden there was an order of magnitude growth, right? We weren't just incrementing another 10 or 20%. It was, okay, overnight we got to account for twice as many projects. So how do we facilitate that in an organized way where we're not stressing the teams out and coordinating multiple go lives, multiple trainings, at the same time?
Yep, no, it makes sense. Yeah, and that's those are the thoughts I have. When we get there, not if, but when. And yeah, it's a great problem to have, but obviously, yeah, yeah, it's a problem nonetheless. Yes.
So let's segue here into really the core topic of today's webinar, which is building rapport with clients and really soliciting repeat work. Now, what I found quite interesting is that we received less interest in today's webinar than some of the other topics. And I think that it's a bit of a miss for a lot of Zoho partners out there. There's a huge opportunity to build that agency business around a support agreement and ongoing work with clients that really becomes a good foundational revenue driver for your organization. And making that leap in recruiting new senior talent that can be quite expensive and scary, as a business owner, finding that experienced cloud solution architect, if you're going to go and recruit for that position, is a senior position. I mean, let's face it, that's a very in-demand skill set, and that's going to be a difficult position to source. And if you're going to need to either recruit more junior talent and train them, there's going to be a ramp-up period of probably 3 to 6 months in our experience to get them really independent and producing. Or you're going to hire a senior person and they're going to be very expensive, and not everyone is going to work out. So regardless, there's going to be an investment, and having a good foundation of predictable repeat work can really create a safety net as you make these kind of financial jumps to recruit for some of these positions, especially in the early days where, if you're a team of 10 and you add another developer, I mean, that's a 10% increase in your workforce. It's very difficult early on, and having a stable book of business can be instrumental in giving you the confidence to make those jumps. So to that end, I think that food for thought here, and this is how we started to structure things, is that we have an implementation side of the business and then a support side of the business. And as we finish implementations, we transition clients to a support agreement, and we try to facilitate as regular check-ins as possible. This is going to help build that rapport with clients. You can reference back to some of the previous webinars where we chat about culture fit and industry fit, really making sure that you gel well with your clients, because then it makes these weekly calls pleasurable. You're jiving well, you have a good rapport with the client, and you can build this relationship where you then can get on top of some of these things to be more proactive when it comes to training opportunities with the system, or if there's something that's not firing right on the technical front, you can jump on it early. We typically separate ongoing support work with these ad hoc changes or training opportunities from more project-based implementations. So we draw the line somewhere around 10 hours, depending on the type of work, where we have these weekly check-ins to kind of keep their system operating well. And through that, we actually identify more project opportunities as well. But in having these conversations, we get this feedback loop happening where we can see if what we implemented is actually benefiting the client's operations. And this is where we get that pulse on, that balance between building this awesome, slick, automated system. Does that actually benefit the business, or are people overwhelmed by the level of automation, or are there too many exceptions that the automation is actually causing issues? That's where I think this really helps, improve the project plans and improve the consulting pieces to really gauge the impact that our solutions are having on clients. So opening up to you guys, what have you found to be a good next step once you have finished an implementation, if there's such a thing in the Zoho world? How do you guys get that feedback and build that rapport with clients to either identify new project opportunities or put in place support agreements to just kind of keep the day-to-day going well?
You take it, Matt, because I have a question after you're done.
Sure. Yeah, no, this is an interesting one, and I think again, we're still kind of working through some of the things that you're a few years ahead of us here, but I love the weekly check-in meeting, and we definitely make very consistent use of that during implementation. But I think this is excellent, food for thought. And we don't have a highly structured handoff to the post-implementation support. We do that a little bit organically. I guess it kind of varies by client, but we tend to keep the weekly check-in pretty consistent for a while after implementation. That depends on the complexity of the project, right? If it's a 2-week project, then obviously it's not going to last long, but a lot of our projects tend to be 3 to 6 months, and it doesn't feel inappropriate to continue to check in for 6 weeks, even though we've gone live a while before that. And for all the reasons that you've listed here, I agree with all of this. And yeah, 9 times out of 10, it's something we didn't think about, or something that we put on the not necessary for the MVP. Let's just get it launched version 2. That now it's time to think about version 2, right? So those conversations do definitely come up. And yeah, luckily on our projects, for the most part, I enjoy keeping in touch with the people and seeing, hopefully the success that has come as a result of the efforts we've all put in. And if not, do something about it, right? I mean, I've gotten, I got one referral, a client of ours that we did a project for, they gave us a referral, and the guy forwarded it back to me. So I got to see what they said about us. And it was nice to see this feedback of, this is the only bill I never mind paying. Right. So it's like, you've done something well.
There you go.
When it's like, the lawyer and the accountant, you're like, I wish I could pay this. But, it's like when someone enjoys paying you, I find that to be good feedback. So anyway,
that's going to get that tattooed. You're going to get that tattooed like on your forearm.
Totally. I'm getting t-shirts and everything. Yes. So anyway, but yeah, I do. I mean, that is just the relationship of it. I mean, it really is. It sounds kind of cheesy almost, but like some of these people are really good friends, right? And you want to stay in touch with them. It'd be weird to just stop.
Yeah.
Go ahead, John Mark.
I think that Matt, you said something interesting there, that that these almost become your friends, and I've had that a problem with scalability in the past, because I love connecting with my clients and keeping in touch, and you got to be careful at scale how you set expectations for post go live support and what kind of work different teams can handle. And a tougher transitional point that we've gone through is that we can no longer have our senior implementation consultants and cloud solution architects be the point contact for these clients post launch, because then you have your top talent that is really needs to be there to do the consulting tied up in some of the more simplistic support and training. And that's where it's a bit of a tough transition to go through, because you need a bit of scale to get there. But I think that early on, it's important to set expectations with the client that there's going to be the implementation side of things and the support side of things. And they may not be the same people. And, you know, getting down to documentation and appropriate training with the client can help smooth out that transition from implementation to support. But something to keep in mind is that you may need to separate those teams, and some clients may be on a different cadence. I mean, certainly we don't meet with every client on a weekly basis. There's some clients that we have support contracts where we on daily calls. Others, we may touch base with them once a month or once a quarter. So, but making sure that you are staffing your departments and your projects correctly so you're not creating bottlenecks is important. And I can speak from experience in saying that you can't have the same person doing project-based work and ad hoc, more agile support work at the same time. That is not sustainable, and you're going to have the work product suffer on both ends.
Okay, yep. Here's my question. I've had a conversation with another partner about this, and with a few other people in the Zoho ecosystem. We've pretty much shut off all support contracts, and I see Peter Coy in the incredibly named Peter Coy in the chat says that you try to avoid support contracts. It absolutely destroyed our ability to grow. Like he's saying, became bogged down with ongoing support, because what was happening was our first set of projects, they just kept, they did come up with new development projects, but B, it was more like, hey, can you remind us what's the difference between a lead and a contact? Or like, hey, can you come train my new sales manager? And number one, that's a problem, because like many of you, we started with lower rates at the beginning and then kind of grew our rates. And so these were my lower rate clients. And number two, it's just like the most boring stuff. Like, we essentially were telling people that we were available for any kind of support. Anything you need with Zoho, we can help. What we've pivoted to, and I don't know if it's the right decision, but I know it's a less annoying decision. We've pivoted to, we do not offer an SLA that is sooner or faster than 72 business hours. And that's just an SLA to get stuff looked at and get it added to a Trello board of features to consider as we ramp up the next phase of your development. Mm-hmm. And you don't get to do development with us unless you've done a defined project planning phase. So like what I am trying to do is I'm trying to teach my clients, okay, dummies. Okay, they're not dummies. Okay, my friends, my friends that allow me to live my entrepreneurial dream. If you have urgent problems and they happen often enough that you need like urgent support, let's find you someone that does that urgent support better than we do, because we don't want to do that, and we that's not really what we want to do, and the margins aren't incredible there, right? So it's like what we are trying to teach our people is, if you think something's urgent, really ask yourself, is it? We're going to put it into a development pipeline and we need, I think John Mark mentioned, minimum 10 hours of work to do, minimum, for us to tee anything up with the developers. And if you really get urgent stuff, run one of your admins through our Zoho Apprenticeship program so you can be self-sufficient, because sorry, we're not going to be there. Like we're just not going to be there for you. And what I found is that my employees love me and worship the ground I walk on for absolving them of these stupid support requests. So, and Glenn, yeah, go ahead. I want to hear everyone's thoughts. And in the chat, you sound off. I'll be chatting back to people. Okay, go ahead.
So I think what it comes down to is good expectation management. At the end of the day, that's going to be the most important thing, is identifying what the process is, what you can and cannot do, and being upfront about that. So you're setting those clear expectations and you're setting the customer up for success, whether that means through adequate documentation, um, doing appropriate trainings with admins, letting them know other resources that they have available, or just simply connecting with other partners to let them know who's out there. And I think that there's no right or wrong way to necessarily handle this. You just need to have some good planning ahead of time to communicate what those expectations are and set them up for success. And I think that there are a couple of questions about cost with staffing projects, and also the amount of documentation. I think it's a little bit of a balancing act, and it becomes tough when you're doing these very lean implementations. When I say lean, probably anything under 20 grand doesn't give you much bandwidth to staff multiple people on a project, and you have to be very judicious with the time that you're putting on the project. So that's going to be a little bit tougher, but I think that what we found, at the very least, having a good process diagram, a good ER diagram that shows what apps are used and how the data relationships are structured. When you do the implementation, really focusing on the must-have features and not allowing too much scope creep into the nice-to-haves, and making sure that the admin is completely familiar with the setup and the reason for the setup. And I think that's probably the most critical piece, is involving a client admin in the process from the get-go, and making sure that they're familiar with the structure of the system and the resources available to them. And then as long as you're communicating your support turnarounds and setting those expectations, I think that it's going to set the relationship up for success.
Okay, devil's advocate. And tell me again, all of us have faced the existential void of owning a Zoho consultancy, where there's so much opportunity, but you're also just like, cool, I get to explain to someone for the 80th time what the difference between a contact and a lead is, and like stupid stuff. I feel, or again, sound off on this. What John Mark is talking about, where you're setting expectations and making sure that a client admin is present to really pick things up, that is like the nirvana of Zoho consulting and development, where it's been implemented properly, the budget is big enough, and there's enough buy-in with enough smart people at the client to really just like make sure this thing gets caked in, and that you don't have to deal with the annoying parts of being a Zoho partner. You just train someone up, you get the commissions, you get a nice development fee, and then when they want additional development, you build, and that admin just keeps taking all the annoying pieces, right? That, to John Mark's point, only comes when you are, like in my experience, the only clients that can do that, they have minimum project sizes over 20 grand. And that's where I think a lot of the Zoho partner ecosystem hasn't built itself or been built towards that level of scale. A lot of people, and again, sound off in chat, speak for yourselves. I started, and for a while, I was like, okay, I'm just going to take a bunch of onesie twosies. Like, we'll be support, we'll be developers, we'll be consulting, we'll be the anything shop. Like, we don't have a process. And I think that what I've realized is the only true nirvana of Zoho projects mostly is above 20 grand, which if you can close deals and have a good pipeline, that's great. But like, it's hard being below that. I don't want to live there anymore. I never want to go back there. They can take my training courses if they want to work with us. But yeah, I'm interested if anyone else has faced that void or thought about that or has problems with that.
Yeah, I'm thinking, and it's a good point. We've got several clients that we are sort of the ongoing Zoho administrator, and it's interesting because I always give people my kind of spiel on support. There's not all that much that quote unquote breaks in Zoho, right? I mean, for the most part, if you set it up correctly, I mean, weird things happen, but it doesn't go down, quote unquote, really, a knock on wood for everyone. But, so having that's part of the expectations too, is that if you need support, it's 24, 36 hour, whatever turnaround, and we'll help you, but it's not a 24/7 operation that you pick up the phone and call whenever. But I guess one thing we've done somewhat recently that I think is actually working okay is for those clients we know are going to be sort of continuously in need of just basic stuff, just the odd little workflow here, or we didn't think of this, or we deleted a bunch of leads and how do we get them back? We in our capacity planning just slot that in at 10 or 20 hours a month, which, is better than it not being slotted in, right? And I guess you have to have some consistency from them that they're going to need certain things. And I think in all those cases, it's actually turned into a little bit of continuing work too, because we talked to them about support, which turns into a mini project. But it's also nice to let them know what their allotment is. Yeah. And if they're going to ask for 37 things today, and we've got 20 hours for the month, we work them somewhat sequentially in order of their prioritization, and it may take 6 weeks to get to a certain thing, unless we want to take a step back and do a full project scope and kind of do the bigger thing. So anyway, that's part of it, right? I think of it as like lanes of traffic, and if you want a small lane of traffic, but you need to put 20 cars through there, you might have a backup, right? So.
But I don't want through sheer inertia my company to morph into an ongoing support, like outsourced IT support firm, just because of like inertia, just because like that literally happens. Like some of you have met Ashton on my team. He's so freaking smart, but because he's so polite and because we didn't set expectations properly, like half of his week, I mean, we've changed it now, but 6 months ago, like half of his week was being chewed up, just like responding to emails from someone being like, hey, could you change up this Zoho Analytics dashboard to have this report? And Ashton's like, sure. So it's like, I don't know. Again, yeah, go ahead.
I think that this can be a very profitable business, and we should be charging for support. So every request, again, it comes down to expectation management, but clients have the choice. They can use Zoho's premium support and pay that 25% adder if they have more than 25 licenses. They can use obviously some free support channels available, and then if they come to us, it's going to be paid support. And it can be a very profitable department, and significantly so, and create that stable base of revenue. Now, to stay on top of these urgent requests that can derail your planning, I think having a couple things, regular check-ins, whether it's weekly or monthly, can predict some of those support issues ahead of time, so that you're not doing things on a last minute. You can give yourself a week to handle it. And then another thing that I want to float out here as an idea that has benefited a few of our clients is doing these quarterly business reviews. Now, this is important when you get into more of the enterprise space. Most large companies do a quarterly business review, and we can accompany that quarterly business review with a tech review, and basically doing an assessment of how we as technology partners for clients can help implement technology to meet their quarterly business plans. And by doing some of these regular support check-ins, but then also these strategic check-ins, can really stay on top of how technology can complement their business. And this also gives you the opportunity to really show your interest in a client's business and their success, getting a pulse on how their business is doing, what their pain points are. We can share with them new case studies or new apps or features that we may have developed for other clients that could be applicable to them. Being proactive with some of these recommendations goes a long way in giving clients food for thought and really showing your interest in their success. We found that in doing some of these more strategic reviews, it really it allows you to take a step back from maybe some of the core apps or processes that you've implemented, and just opens up the discussion again. And you'd be surprised at how many broad opportunities may come from that. Now, be careful not to take on more than what your organization should focus on. And I'm sure that we'll have another webinar that will come down to focus in the Zoho ecosystem, because there are far too many apps for all of us to be an expert at everything. So it's important that you draw the line, but having these more strategic conversations, you can definitely open up some good lines of project-based work as well. So to you guys, I guess how often have you found that having some of these continued conversations, do you get that phase 2 or that phase 3 project? And can you maybe speak to some of the benefits or the drawbacks of doing subsequent project-based work with clients versus taking on a new client? Because I think that there's some pros and cons there.
Yeah. We get follow-on work 100% of the time, right, Matt? Like always. It's like literally always. Go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, no, we don't have a quarterly, cadence. I would say this sort of meeting happens for us typically at the request of the client. They have a development in their business, or they have an idea, and they'll say, hey, can we schedule kind of a brainstorm big picture session? So we do these types of meetings, but a less regular cadence, I suppose. But so obviously when they come to us, we kind of know they got something in mind, right? So you kind of see the next project coming. But yeah, I guess your other part of the question of kind of the pros and cons of doing more work for the same client. Pro, obviously, kind of what you're getting into. Both in terms of the team and their competence and just generally what it's like to work with them. Obviously, clearly a pretty good indicator that the first project was successful if they're coming back for more. The cons, I suppose, is if it's someone you didn't particularly love working with. It's hard to say no when you said yes the first time, right? It's like, why don't you like me now, right? So, and the other thing, which I experienced, and I've gotten some feedbacks from my other consultants and developers and whatnot, is one of the cons is sometimes it was boring, right? And now we're going to do more of this boring thing, and it while it's useful and profitable and all that for both the client and for us, it may not have been just a fun thing, right? Kind of there's mundane stuff out there that makes the world go round.
Yeah, I think that in having established that rapport with your clients, it really gives you the opportunity to push back and put some boundaries on what you can and cannot do. I found that clients are actually quite pleased when we say that we can't do something, and say that at the end of the day, we're here to make sure that whatever we tackle for you is going to be done right, and that we're going to be able to staff the project appropriately with the right expertise to make sure that it's going to be successful. And if you have that kind of rapport and trust with the client, we found that more often than not, it's actually okay to say, do you know what, I'm afraid we can't help you out here. We don't have the right resources available at this time. And maybe it's something to that effect, where you're not necessarily walking away from it completely and leaving them in the lurch, but maybe you have to say, do you know what, we certainly can get to that, but it's not going to be until 2021. My senior engineers that can tackle that and again guarantee its success really just aren't going to be available until then. So we can either get that scheduled now, or I can help connect you with another partner that may be able to step in and help out here. And I think that that's going to make sure that you can, at least for us, we've been able to keep our senior resources that we need on the solution architecture front, or we need those managers to be able to manage and support our folks from being sucked into these ongoing complex projects. And man, I mean, I feel you. We've had those those clients, and we have them right now, where we are deeply invested in each other. I mean, they need us, and we need to have senior resources on their projects, because we're managing very large enterprise systems that have 10 different API integrations. And, you know, without our technical expertise, their processes could really crumble if we don't give them that amount of attention. And to those clients, we've had to have more strategic conversations of, you know, hey, you either need to get an in-house resource to handle this, or if we're going to be here for you the way that you need us, then we need to have a minimum buy-in, and we need to be able to allocate 2 hours every single day of the senior engineer's time, and you need to pay for it no matter what. Because if you expect that same day turnaround, we have to schedule their availability. So what we start to do with clients is put together either a daily or weekly meeting, whatever cadence makes sense, having some of that capacity where you can jump on some of the urgent things that may come up, but then also have some fallback activities, some general CRM admin of cleanups, you know, and deduplication that can be fallback. So as you schedule that time, you address the most urgent things, you have the capacity to jump on it, but then you have some fallback activities that can kind of keep the day-to-day running smoothly. And I think that that combination of the right amount of pushback, but where you do have those clients that are, you really need to take care of them, you structure it in a way that it can be mutually beneficial. And if you have a buy-in to a minimum number of hours per week or per month, then it gives you the opportunity to perhaps give a rate, you know, cut, you know, if you have that guaranteed business for them. So the other thing that I wanted to really touch on is how we can build brand loyalty. So most folks who choose Zoho end up sticking with Zoho. I mean, it's a great sticky ecosystem. And what can we do as consultants to make sure that they want to stay with a Catalyst or with a Workflow Academy or Trail Guide? Some of the things that we have done is we've invested pretty heavily in our portal. Obviously, you guys have seen that. And we increasingly making more and more resources available in that portal. So we actually have clients that are now starting to use that portal to document all of their processes, whether they're Zoho related or not. We include in there some best practice guides to change management, to security, you know, some of these like value adds where we're not necessarily charging for it. So there was a question of whether we charge for those quarterly business reviews. We don't, we treat that more as a sales call. When it comes to some of the portal documentation, we include these best practice guides and that for free, as long as the client has done a project with us. And having some of this kind of branded content and value add information or tools, I think is really helping to build some, you know, brand loyalty to Catalyst. So I'm wondering what you guys have done, whether it's in, you know, free consulting, or if it's, you know, really just excelling in what you do. What do you guys do to help build that brand loyalty?
Yeah, go ahead, Peter.
We followed your path, John Mark, of saying we do consulting, but we also are building ancillary products that we use. For us, it's training and our knowledge base. Theoretically, I want everyone to be like, oh, wow, those guys are about the smartest there is at Zoho, and they're also really, really friendly, and they teach, and they're happy to share. That kind of has become our brand and will continue to be our brand. So we give a lot of our content away for free. And yes, we make some money on our content, but really the brand building from that is like worth its weight in gold. It's allowed us to hike our rates drastically, allows us access to a much higher tier of projects, recruit new employees, other partners like talking with us and working with us. So I'm with John Mark on the really, I like development and consulting, but the thing I think that every partner needs to look at developing ancillary products within Zoho. So yeah.
Yeah, I this is another great point. I agree with everything on the board. I don't know that we do all this today. Specifically, the branded content and things of that nature is not something we've focused on. I see the value in it, but personally, we just have not done a lot of that. To me, I guess it's not necessarily brand loyalty, but I guess a lot of the projects we work on are complex enough that you're sort of loyal out of the cost of switching. It would be very difficult to change, right? And so that's, I think, part of working and being like invested in this company as much as they're invested in you. It's mutual loyalty, not just them being loyal to us. So yeah, this is one I don't have a lot of necessarily experience on how to do it, but clearly a lot of it comes down to doing excellent work, being reliable, doing what you doing what you set out to do, and how else could you build better loyalty than that, than being somebody that they can depend on, right? I mean, that's kind of what it comes down to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that as we all scale, building this brand loyalty becomes very important, because I think right now a lot of us have loyalty between our employees and a particular employee on the client side, not necessarily a loyalty to our companies as a whole. And I think that as you start to develop more process and departments and need to have multiple people plug in to support a client, it's important for those clients to have an affinity for your brand and your company as a whole, not for a specific developer. Because people need to get promoted. They need to be able to have some flexibility and move around. And if you're working with the same clients day in and day out, and it's that boring work, you're going to lose your people. So you need to be able to create a structure that allows them to move up and progress in the organization, while also keeping those clients engaged with your company and having mechanisms to support them when those key people do move on.
Not to beat a dead horse, John Mark, just to quickly talk to that point. That's the reason we stopped doing support, is because my employees are like, this is our least favorite part of our lives. And it's like, oh, I mean, you're totally right. It's super lucrative. Like, get everyone on a retainer and just print money. But what was happening is that my employees are like, I probably won't stick with this job very long if like my job is to reply. And maybe then I should hire, and I guess theoretically I could hire and pick different employees who I guess like customer support. And David put in the chat, support can be the canary for more development work. Totally agree. But I'd rather just like do a weekly check-in with them rather than like respond to their email requests. I don't know. Sorry, I'll shut up. This is my pet issue I've been talking a lot about.
I think that's where the support department can be a good training ground for new recruits, because it can get them exposure to a lot of new things. And again, setting expectations that the client isn't expecting that the support representative is going to be able to answer every single question on every app and understand their process backwards. We need to make sure that we are drawing that fine line between business consulting and tech consulting. And oftentimes we get pulled into the business side, and you can't put your employees in a position where they're expected to give industry best practice advice on X industry out there with whatever app, and now they feel responsible for that customer success. And if something doesn't work, they're second guessing whether they were giving the right advice. So I think that at the end of the day, this all comes together. We need to make sure that we have good process. We need to have the right teams and the right people. We need to set the right expectations with clients and facilitate the right amount of communication. With those things in place, you then can build the right structures to preemptively get on top of support issues on your timing, not on the client's. You can separate the work out so that you have the right types of work going to the right people, and the structure and the loyalty in place that gives your employees the freedom to move up. And the client has the right expectations in terms of who they're going to be interacting with on the team and how they can feel supported by the company as a whole, not necessarily by a particular individual. And I think that in having these frequent lines of communication, we can solicit the feedback and create that feedback loop to improve our own processes. And that ultimately, I think, leads to better referrals, better reputations in the marketplace of, who can specialize in what. And we need to make sure that we're communicating that to each other as partners, which areas we like to focus on, where we have capacity and where we don't. Because I can tell you right now, with 30 people on our team, there's some areas that we have plenty of capacity where we can slot in projects tomorrow. And there are other areas that we're going to have to wait probably 3 months to get a client in, because there's specific areas of expertise, whether it be a product fit or an industry fit, where those resources are tied up. So I want to make sure that we are leveraging each other in this partner community to best support each other with various apps or expertise or capacity. Because that's what's going to help us all grow in the future. So let's open it up to any questions or feedback. Matt, Peter, what were your takeaways from today? And if anyone has any questions or their takeaways, please feel free to add it to the chat here.
I value my clients more and will stop complaining about them so much. Thank you so much. I'll go send some emails right now.
Yeah, no, that is one of the things I'm sitting here churning through, is this whole support thing. Clearly it's a challenge, right? And right, different ways to handle it, but yeah, that's one of the things I'm thinking of here.
Great. Well, if anyone on this webinar in the future would like to get in touch with us to schedule a partner chat, we have Tara Higginson, our Director of Marketing, on the line. She'd love to meet with you folks. I'd love to have a strategic call as well. Get to know you, your expertise better, and see how we can all best support each other. So I think that in doing so, we can learn from each other and really grow as a community. So a couple of questions that have come in here is asking for reviews. I think that this is an easy thing to do if you have that regular cadence and check-in. Typically what we will ask clients is, get some feedback on how the system is working for them. If they are happy with it, we will ask them to perhaps do a case study, and through that ask for the review. And we turn it back as a learning opportunity for us. How can we do a deep dive to see how this system has impacted your business? That will help us identify any gaps that we may have had in the implementation, and potentially get you some good exposure. Some clients like that exposure, others don't. So you're going to have to obviously know your client to choose who you are getting in touch with and asking for those reviews. And then the way that we ask is, for general feedback, please let us know how we can do to better support you in the future, or how we could have improved the implementation process. Well, with that, guys, I think that we're at the top of the hour. It was a pleasure having everyone on today's call. Thanks, Matt and Peter, for joining me, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Cheers.